Good morning, folks, and I want to thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us here at ARC in Orlando for hopefully what you thought was a informative and somewhat interesting session, and hopefully this session you'll find is equally informative and interesting as well. My name is Tim Shea. I'm a senior analyst at ARC. I've been there about a little over 9 years, and primarily I've been focused on the upstream, midstream oil and gas technologies and solutions. Do some work on aftermarket retrofit, compressor and turbine monitoring and controls, optimization, I guess, if you will, and I've been focusing a lot on obviously oil and gas and analytics. So we've got three tremendous speakers today, so I'm going to be kind of relatively brief. I've got a few Slido questions, I guess, if I could figure out how to do these. But the housekeeping, they ask if you can ideally try to turn your phone on vibrate, provide feedback through the ARC Forum app. Obviously it's the last day, so there's not much in terms of hopefully everybody had some fun, had a chance to look at the penguins and the whales or whatever they had last night, and maybe get on that roller coaster ride. You wouldn't catch me on that because wouldn't be a good situation. And just ask questions. We're going to have a Q&A after all the speakers are done, and we're going to have a great panel discussion. So so now I'm going to launch my Slido surveys here. We'll see how well it works. So basically, I don't know what happened there, but. You're logged out. Okay. There's supposed to be like a QR code. Is that there? Oh, maybe not. Bear with us as we have a. Well, there's supposed to be a QR code. If you have a couple of seconds, you take a picture of it on your phone. A little link will come up, and then you can. They're pretty quick questions, yes or no, and some maybe multiple choice questions. So anyways, how's everybody like the weather, huh? Pretty good? How about them Celtics, huh? There you go. Now we're talking, right? Hopefully there's no one here that's a Golden State fan, but there we go. Oh, that's the first question. So if you want to take that, do a quick QR code. We're just trying to get a sense as to how many guys, I'm hoping a lot of people here, they're oil and gas or chemicals or whatever industry you're, in my personal opinion, if you haven't started this journey yet, then you're personally and professionally negligent. But that's my own, not an ARC opinion, of course, that's my own opinion, but because there's so much going on with the digitalization of your operations. And obviously if you're in oil and gas and you've survived the volatility over, starting in June of 2014 and up until now, there's been a little bit of volatility, which I guess is common for the oil and gas industry and obviously chemicals and some other ones. So it's encouraging that the number's pretty high. I wouldn't expect it to be quite 100%, but I hope it's going to be pretty high. So we'll give you guys a few seconds to take time to do those surveys, and so it looks like about 85, 15. Okay, that's good. And maybe, I don't know, can I come back to these later on and see if they've updated later on, or? Oh, you don't know? All right. Okay. So then the next one is, obviously, if you answered yes, for which operational areas or applications have they been deployed? So we got seismic reservoir management. Obviously, there's a lot of big data going on there. Before big data was big data. Drilling and completions. I mean, there might be some intelligent completions going on, or drilling optimization, artificial lift and production. That's obviously optimizing ESPs, PCPs, rod pumps. And then there's pipeline integrity management, which is kind of encompassing. That could include, pipeline integrity with corrosion monitoring, and the integrity of the pipe. It could be leak detection. So there's a pretty broad. And then there's other, which is obviously probably where most people are answering, and then refining and downstream is, I'm pretty sure that there's some use of analytics for quite a while there. They're probably about 10 or 20 years, depending on who you talk to, ahead of the upstream. So, but it's interesting that, I find it interesting that, well, I guess I'm curious what a lot of those others are, because, I mean, I tried to be I couldn't add up, 20 options, but I mean, there must be a lot of, it must be predictive maintenance. I guess you could have a lot in there for predictive maintenance, rotating equipment and things like that, or any number of things. And chemicals. Yeah. Well, someone told me you should only limit it to so many. And then, of course, one of my colleagues, I took one of his surveys, and he had like 15 or 20 items and ranked them. And I'm like, well, how the hell did he get that? Someone told me that, I would have added more in here. But anyways, I don't know if they'd even fit on the screen. But anyway, so you get an idea that there's a lot of areas for opportunity to obviously optimize production. Obviously, most people and many industries, particularly in oil and gas, are really trying to lower the cost per barrel of oil equivalent. It's a big factor, increasing production. So that's good. That's right. And then I think we have one more. If you're one of those 10 or 15% of the people that's not doing this, if not, then when are you planning on doing it? You got something going on right now? Are you looking at it next year? I mean, we're just curious as to, I hope that's a pretty short time period, because my personal opinion is that if you're not doing it by now, then man, you really are behind the eight ball. But I'm sure there's some guys, particularly private companies that are maybe smaller and independent that might tell me to go fly a kite, but that's another story. But that's all right. So that's good. So it looks like if you're not doing it, you're probably going to you're thinking about it pretty quickly. So that's an encouraging sign. I guess did it go? Does it go to the next slide, or I guess not? I don't know. But there's supposed to be another slide after that, but we'll. Oh, there we go. Oh, there we go. We'll go back to the. Is there no more slides? What happened to all my other slides that were there? Okay, I guess I'm going to be a little shorter than Anyways, there should be some slides there, but we'll figure that out later on. But basically, in my slides, I was going to talk about a number of different things, list a bunch of applications where we're seeing people are using them for, intelligent completions, pump optimization, you name it. There's a number of applications, and there's a lot of areas operationally where oil and gas and chemicals and, pulp and paper, and a lot of these guys can really benefit from utilizing, because it's really software. What I found was interesting is that when I watched the Bank of America keynote, then I saw how much money was being spent on software and in manufacturing, and how little was spent on oil and gas. It was less than I thought. I knew it was going to be a low number, but I didn't think it was going to be that low. So it really tells me that you oil and gas guys and others have got to get your you got to get your heads in gear and start getting a little bit more, looking at the stuff a little more seriously, because I think there's a lot of value. Based on the research we're seeing, the people we're talking to, there's a lot of activity in using, analytics and industrial Internet of Things and to optimize operations. And then I had, talking about the business case. And the one thing I want to give you the takeaway is that I always tell people that technology is only at best half the equation. And we've had a number of clients, pay us to audit their plants or talk to their folks in different parts of their operation to see, are they ready for this digital transformation? I mean, are they ready culturally? Are they ready with their work processes? Because that's where I think you can. And I use this example of a guy I talked to about. He had one of these OEMs that had he had a really nice looking pump optimization solution. You put it on there, it does all the vibration monitoring and all this other stuff. And he said, the technicians would take it off in the field and run it over with a pickup truck. So you've got to get the people to, kind of embrace this new stuff. And you got to educate them and be transparent and say, look, we're not trying to take your job. We're trying to empower and augment what you do. And, if I was one of these guys, I would probably take advantage of any opportunity to train, to learn new skills, because this is what's going to happen. I'm sorry, go ahead. Oh, it's ready. Okay, all right, so. That's okay. So anyways, this is kind of what we're talking about. Companies are obviously, you've heard a lot about people talking about the cloud and the edge, and I think that's so people are really, acting accordingly in that area. These are just some of the list, and you'll get a copy of this later on. So different applications and things that we're seeing. I think a big area could be like, pipeline monitoring, pipeline integrity, and not just leak detection, but also, integrity, asset management of the pipelines, compressor and pump stations, things like that. And obviously methane and leak detection is going to be, because obviously ESG is increasingly, particularly if you're a public company, it's increasingly becoming a pressure point for companies is to not only track and monitor, but mitigate, methane and leak detection for obvious environmental, and obviously it's just good business practice in my opinion. And this is kind of a slide that I took from one of my colleagues that, he's kind of he's one of our digital twin guys, and if you come to me with a question, I'll direct you to someone else in terms of it looks nice, and it's basically it's talking about how, everybody talks about what is a digital twin, and everybody can say, I get a digital twin, and and he can say, well, anything with simulation could be theoretically a digital twin, but we try to put some parameters around it in terms of obviously these process modeling with engineering simulation. There's a lot of activity going on 3D and particularly in like dashboards and things like that, because you can have a lot of data, but you need to have that data visualized to somebody at the right time, the right person, in the right amount, because you don't want to, obviously looking at alarm management, alarm overload, data overload could be a huge problem. So trying to manage that whole process is going to be critical. And then obviously, data is kind of like the new oil, the new gold. I mean, getting your data, making sure its data is hygienic and clean, and managing, like people talk about, digital twins, but one of the biggest things in digital twins is how do you maintain and sustain that digital twin? Because you need good data, you need, so data governance and things like that. So there's a lot of issues in that area that you may have already heard during this conference. Challenges, obviously, in the oil and gas, it's anywhere. It's really containing costs, increasing productivity, and increasing collaboration. And someone mentioned it in a session in the last day or two. I always talk about in oil and gas, you've got internal ecosystems and external ecosystems. You'll have multiple partners on a project, then you'll have multiple contractors, drilling guys and oil field service guys. You'll have a number of people. And you're trying to, I used to call it, I hate to say it, but I used to say it was a dysfunctional orchestra, and you need to try to get everybody to stop playing on the same tune and getting that fine tuning that, and we're seeing a lot of that, because everybody, you've heard by now that there's no one that's got the silver bullet. No one's got this all figured out, and no one company's going to be able to do all this. So you really need to build a strong ecosystem of partners. And then, you can talk about the great crew change. I mean, obviously, a lot of people with the recent layoffs, due to the pandemic, I think some people that I knew that were in the industry for quite a while, they just said, hey, I've had enough of this, and they're moving on to other things. And that's going to be a challenge for companies, to try to compete against Google and Facebook and Meta, and AWS and all these other guys that they have, because kids want to do the cutting edge stuff. And I think oil and gas with this new technology is a good way to help recruit people, in my opinion. Challenges, obviously, if you were here on Monday or Tuesday, there was a great guy from Clint Walker from the Department of Homeland, from the Department of Homeland Security, great presentation. Cybersecurity is like, it's like beyond table stakes. It's like your DNA. You got to have it. Obviously, standardization, obviously like subsea, if you're talking about subsea, just the documentation alone is, the customization there and all that stuff. So they're trying to really move towards standardization, modularization as much as possible. Again, it's to cut costs and to, speed time to the oil, or whatever, the speed time to market, or whatever the case may be. And there's obviously increasing societal and political and increasingly investor, if you're a public company, you're increasingly getting a lot of pressure from BlackRock and others to, really what are you doing sustainability-wise? So I think that's going to be, and obviously I'm sure people have talked about it, but using digital technologies to help you not only lower costs and increase production, but it's going to help you meet your sustainability goals. I mean, you got to measure this stuff, you got to monitor it, and you need to report it. So that having that kind of data is going to become increasingly critical. And then obviously the complexity of what's going on, integration. We looked at some projects, in different areas. And the key challenge that a lot of users and operators talked about was the integration of all this stuff, trying to make all this stuff work, break down those silos. And again, that goes back to people, culture, and processes. Yeah, we talked about this, cost reductions, streamlining operations, particularly if there's a lot of, people are selling off assets to other people, and, you're picking up assets. So a lot of that, and then just trying to manage all that, getting all these different, architectures and systems to work together, and, all that stuff is increasingly complex. With the pandemic, obviously, they increased the need for remote operations, and I think there's a big push right now. You're going to hear a little bit about connected workers in the next speaker here. Obviously, optimizing production, again, while ensuring, how do you manage that big, I used to always tell people that, hydrocarbons, that segment is like a big glacier. It's melting slowly. Some people want it to melt faster, and some people realize it's not going to melt as fast as they think. But how do you manage that migration, to these other alternative energy sources? And then again, sustainability. There's some people would accuse some companies of greenwashing, and then there's others that are really, taking. But everybody is basically saying we got to do this. Everybody's kind of migrating and managing it to their own pace. And then I kind of talked about the need for an ecosystem, and particularly strong technology partners, companies like Wood and Microsoft and others that are going to be able to help you navigate this journey. Because, like I said, no one's got it all figured out, and a lot of these guys in like an oil and gas or chemicals, I mean, that's what they focus on. I always tell people, like, stick to your knitting, and pick best of breed partners to work with, because then you're going to save yourself a lot of time and pain and probably, hopefully, money. So there's kind of a busy slide, but you can probably pick it up, reducing NPT, things like that. So that's it.